We made a video about bad developer-intended strategies just for fun, and to our delight, you, our kind viewership, found great delight in it. So much so that you suggested more for us to tackle. So in this video, to thank you for your kindness, and to further indulge our unquenchable sadism at Game Freak's expense, we are doing just that. We selected our favorites and present them to you here. Here are more bad developer-intended strategies. But before we start, this video is sponsored by Factor. If you're anything like us at FSG, you probably lead a very busy life, whether it be work or other obligations. Who has time to add further stress to your day prepping, cooking, and cleaning when it comes to your food? And takeout is too expensive. Why not enjoy your food stress-free by ordering a box from Factor? All of Factor's meals are chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and come from a weekly menu of 35 options. They are pre-cooked and ready to eat right out the microwave after just 2 minutes. They may be pre-cooked, but they are never frozen, so they are way better than frozen TV dinners. In fact, Factor was kind enough to send us a keto box, which have all sorts of low-carb meals that are delicious. I especially love this pesto bacon and tomato chicken bake, and this jalapeno lime cheddar chicken. Man, that was really good. But keto isn't their only option. You get to choose from a bunch of different meal plans from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and of course, veggie and vegan. But that's not all. Factor now has loads of snack options, including breakfast, smoothies, juices, and small bites. And even these new 100% plant-based protein shakes, which are latte flavored for an extra caffeinated kick. And the best part, it's way cheaper than eating takeout. Don't fall into the overpriced takeout trap. With Factor, you get the convenience of takeout as it's delivered straight to your door, but at a much more affordable price. So what are you waiting for? Eat stress-free and head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code FalseSwipe50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code FalseSwipe50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. And thank you so much to Factor for sponsoring this video. We have a dear spot in our hearts for the official strategy guides published in accordance with each game. Even if you don't particularly need the help or you think it's cheap or whatever, they're still fun to parse through. We're not playing Pokemon games for the difficulty after all, much more the lore and the world, and those strategy guides are another perspective, another venture into those adorned by the artwork we've become so fond of. Plus, as a bonus, you might even learn something from them, as they offer more than just an explanation of the type chart and thus the need for a balanced team. For instance, way before you get into its story mode, the Pokemon Coliseum guidebook, a favorite of ours, is absolutely loaded with a gem of double battle strategy, stressing the importance of well thought out combinations ranging from the instantaneous threat of Sunny Day Solar Beam to the anti-electric support of Rhydon's Lightning Rod. Having said that, they're not immune to a gaff or two, and this first strategy, brought to us attention by you, the viewership, comes from the Guide to Pokemon Battle Revolution, which suggested, without a trace of irony, to use Giga Impact on a Pokemon with Truant. Oh boy. Even when considering the entry-level nature of the whole affair, this one's pretty egregious. You think it's kind of hard to mess this kind of thing up. You could, arguably should, stick with informing the reader in this, the brand new Generation 4, consider it pause for a certain percentage of viewers to feel their age in their bones, including me. We wouldn't want to go too fast. That Rock-type Pokemon now receive a special defense boost in Sandstorm. Since Rock types generally have lower special defense, this makes it more difficult for standard tactics to take them down. Thus, you could pair the Sandstream setting Hippowdon with the Rock-type Rhyperior to minimize a significant weakness for the latter. Rhyperior also has the solid Rock ability, which weakens super effective attacks, making it even tougher to take down. Alternatively, you could use Tyranitar, which sets Sandstream and is a Rock type itself, meaning it effectively gives itself great special defense. That kind of thing is the bread and butter of strategy guides. Even if the example used less than great Pokemon, like if we said to pair Hippowdon with Rampardos or whatever, the point is still well taken. We recall again the Pokemon Coliseum guidebook, which illustrated its aforementioned Lightning Rod Rhydon point by telling us that we could use this for the benefit of Pokemon with a quadruple electric weakness like Pelipper. Now, even as a kid, you know that there's no way on earth that you'd want to use a goofy Pokemon like Pelipper. Remember, newer trainers, there were generations where the Drizzle ability was only carried by Kyogre, and an exception was not made for our Pelican pal. However, even though you were a kid, or perhaps because you were a kid, you weren't restricted by the silliness of being overly literal-minded, unlike the fascinating phenomenon amount of adults who seemingly need everything spelled out to them in unmistakable terms. You, as a kid, understood that even if Pelipper itself wouldn't be your lightning rod partner of choice, that would be right on strain. We stressed this to emphasize just how difficult this task is to mess up. However, that didn't stop the presumably adult strategic minds who came up with this first strategy, as they were seemingly dead set on making the Hyper Beam style strategy work. And with this level of dedication, it's safe to say they were more enamored with the possibilities of the move than the younger players who, while they might have 4 fire moves on Charizard, one which very well might be the Hyper Beam variant Blast Burn, at least understood that they had other fire moves, specifically because Hyper Beam and its ilk were not to be used as a primary strategy, more like a last resort. This is the kind of thing that makes you realize that no, it's not weird or unusual that Ash regularly beat adult trainers. They are perfectly capable of being incapable, even if they were gym leaders. Life lessons aside, hopefully the ridiculousness of Truant and Giga Impact together, as if it made sense, has been self-evident until now. But if not, here's why. Yes, the Surfic logic is traceable, certainly, as both share the effect that they take the following turn away from the user. However, Truant still lets you switch out on the second turn. When you use Giga Impact, you are forced to recharge. No switching allowed. All this does is make you even more exploitable. What's the first Truant Pokemon that comes to mind anyway? Slacking? Well, yeah, you can use Giga Impact on it, but that's because you may as well go all in if you're gonna take the risk of using Slacking, and it gets stab on it. It's not like some sort of deep strategy that works just as well if you're using the unstab Giga Impact of Truant Durant. The suggestion by the guidebook is that Truant somehow goes hand in hand with the Giga Impact strategy. In fact, what's really outrageous is the blurb that describes the strategy's use. Quote, slack off for 1 turn and then hit with Giga Impact, end quote. Putting aside amusing thoughts of slack off the move, what is this even saying? Why is it so important to not move for a turn and then use Giga Impact? Is it somehow crucial that before you Giga Impact, you burn a turn through Truant? That's what's being suggested here anyway. Language is important. The unspoken part is, of course, that this so-called strategy entails 3 turns for the price of 1 attack. What are you supposed to do on that first turn before Truant's slacking off effect kicks in? Don't worry about it. This one is so ridiculous, it got our minds racing, trying to answer the interminable unknowable, which is, of course, the question, why? As a bonus segment from the Battle Revolution guidebook, they also suggested that one use Cherrim in Sun because Solar Beam won't need to charge. Sure, nothing wrong with that. And also that the Sunlight will activate its Flower Gift ability, which will boost the attack and special attack of both itself and its teammates. This is all well and good, except it's blatantly incorrect. It's the special defense that gets bolstered, not special attack. If the special attack stat Cherrim actually wants to use gets boosted, it might be, well, not worthwhile, but less worthless, especially in double battles where something like Ho-Oh can get its best stats boosted even further. Shoutouts to Shota, who won the 2010 VGC in the juniors division with the Cherrim. But anyways, bad strategies are one thing, but misinformation is far worse. As you've leveled up your Luxio or whatever electric type of companies you on your journey, you've probably found it trying to learn this move, and you've even accepted it. It seems better than Leer anyway. It actually seems pretty cool that Charge doubles the power of your next move if it's an electric type move. Starting in Gen 4, it also gives you a special defense boost. Hot dog, what more could you ask for? Besides the lost original cut of the 1997 film Event Horizon. Well, during your in-game travels, you probably noticed that you never actually wound up using Charge, and when the time came, you didn't have much of a problem forgetting it in favor of something else, and the standard for what that something was pretty low. You probably didn't even mind throwing an HM move like Rock Climb in Steed. Again, for those newer to the Pokemon world, you used to have to teach your Pokemon certain moves to advance through parts of the map, as unbearable as that probably sounds now. Anyway, yes, you personally didn't use Charge. You might feel some temporary anticipation when a gym leader's electric type uses Charge. Oh boy, that next hit is gonna hurt, you think. And then you realize how pointless the whole thing is considering it's a one-time deal. It is the same thing as attacking twice. Is this a cool way of getting around Torment? Sure. That's the only real way we can think to quote-unquote justify this nonsense. The effect wearing off after is what really renders this worthless. If it doubled the power of all your electric moves till you switched out, sure, that'd be great. Can you imagine Zapdos raining those Thunderbolts down on the opponent? Sadly, it's especially dumb because the effect wears off if your next attack isn't electric, so it forces you into a certain attack if you want to actually reap its benefits. Talk about exploitable. If you wanted to use one of Zapdos' other other moves, as you very well could, your charge turn would have been an utter waste. The special defense boost is cool, but not worth the move slot. Use an assault vest if you really need that, or if you want an electric type method of boosting not just your electric attacks but all of your attacks, you can use the superior charge move, Charge Beam. We can summarize charge like this. You know how before you got into the competitive scene, you thought boosting moves like Sword Stance were a waste? Charge is the real life version of that. Round belongs to the category of moves we had to look up on Bulbapedia because honestly, we forgot what it did. We remembered seeing it in the early stages of Black and White in-game, that it's a normal move. We thought it did damage, which thankfully was correct, but it seemed bad and forgettable. Fortunately, we are once again vindicated. Yes, it's a doubles focused strategy, but it's also a very bad one. Round is a 60 base power normal move. Normal, already off to a good start. That, if used by both Pokemon on a given turn, will result in the second round being doubled to 120 base power. So all that effort, the move slots it takes, the commitment to using it on the same turn, the fact that the first round is a measly 60 base power is never going to do any sort of meaningful damage for something that basically amounts to a special version of Double Edge. Spectacular. From a pure design standpoint, round is pretty cool, but it's so brutally dry for such a colorful idea, even from the seemingly cynical, sterile standpoint of competitive design. A normal move, the whole idea is that singing becomes more powerful if done in conjunction with others. And as any artistically inclined person knows, great art is more than the sum of its parts. It's not just voice 1 and voice 2. It's voice 1 and voice 2 coming together to create something special. With this in mind, don't just make it a double empowered version of the first round. Go even further if you're going to go all this effort and the first round is going to be so weak. For that matter, you can maybe pump up the power of the original round too, but that might be too much to ask. So let's stick with the idea of the second round not just going to 150 base power, a la the pledges, but also changing types to gain stab on the Pokemon's primary typing. Now that, while still overly convoluted and precise, is something that you can work with. Maybe the first round gains stab too, if it's being followed by a second one. That way you're not forced to using normal types for it. Whatever you wind up changing it to, it'd be an improvement over the tremendously bad and above all forgettable version of what round is now. And something based on singing should be anything but that. Alright, this one kinda only half counts, because Stockpile itself isn't actually bad. Boosting both defenses is solid. Not many Pokemon get Cosmic Power, and the fact that it maxes out at +3 won't really make much of a difference in practice, as you're probably not boosting past that point anyway, unless you're walking over the opponent already, and +3 is going to be sufficient to take most hits. The ridiculous part though is where Spit Up and Swallow come in. Grotesque names aside, the strategy is farcical as well. Swallow heals either 25%, 50%, or all of the user's HP based on how many times Stockpile has been used. Yeah, a total of 3 turns for the same recovery percentage as Recover or Roost, or 4 turns to get up back to full, which is 1 more turn than it takes to rest and burn 2 turns of sleep. Oh, and Gen 4 and onwards, once you swallow, we're very sorry for how that sounds, blame Game Freak, once you swallow, you lose the defense boost you stockpiled. Very cool. Back to square one. We don't know what kind of walling shenanigans Game Freak imagined here, where you strengthen your bulk only to lose it when you heal off the damage you presumably took while boosting. Even if you were getting bulkier, you're not going to be that bulky to the point where you don't need a heal at all. But suffice to say, it's ridiculous. Nothing like a wall that can't immediately heal when you need to. Even in the quickest scenario, it takes 2 turns to heal 25%. Yikes. Spit Up at least seems like it has some potential. Its initial base power is 100, and it is multiplied by the number of times Stockpile is used, so it can go up to 200 or even 300 base power. Plus, the boosting of defenses theoretically lets you accumulate them more easily, so you can feasibly hit as hard as possible at least once. Copacetic, right? Or so Game Freak would have you think, were it not for the completely absurd premise to fall apart upon any scrutiny whatsoever. Spit Up is a normal move. Once again, the uselessness of this alone rings out above any redeeming factors, but that's not all. In the quickest case, you stockpile once and then you spit up for 100 base power. That's perfectly solid damage, but it's about as far from justifying a strategy where you must boost before you can attack, even before you take the normal typing of it all into account. Okay, sure, but what about further stockpiles? Well, if you can boost twice or even 3 times, you're going to hit really hard no matter what you're using. You hardly need the restrictions of Spit Up to achieve the power it offers. Plus, on top of everything else, you only get to unleash your super-powered move once. What kind of nonsense is that? If you're going to boost 2 or 3 times, you better be able to spam that move to high heaven. You're basically accumulating multiple comm mines only to use Hyper Beam. There's a reason people don't do that. And even that would be better than Stockpile and Spit Up, since if you can survive the recharge turn, you can attack again with the same number of boosts. Finally, we've got another move with a romantic name. Now, this one at least has some real potential. 120 base power is the real deal, and poison typing allows it some valuable super effective smacks against fairy and grass types. Plus, the premise to enable it doesn't seem particularly outlandish. It's not dissimilar to acrobatics, which requires the users to not hold an item. Belch is more specific, requiring its user to consume a berry, and consume, not get rid of. You can't fling it, you can't trick it, or even use natural gift. Nope, you've got to eat the berry in the sense that you receive whatever its effect is. Pataya's special attack boost, Citrus's health restoration, Lum's status healing, whatever. Once you've done that, you are free to belch to your heart's content, much to the delight of your roommates and or significant other. The problem is that this is just too restricted. You unlock some powerful coverage that you are reliant on not just holding a specific subset of item, but actually activating that item. This is not the easiest thing to guarantee, by the way, and even if you think you can pull it off, questions of if the reward is worth the restriction then arise. Forcing your belcher into some form of danger before it can attack is always going to carry some hefty risk. Most reliably is probably throwing your belcher into status and eat your lumberry. But then you realize that in order to use belch, you generally have to run an itemless Pokemon. This is already a fairly tall ask for acrobatics, and it tends to work there because the Pokemon using it are tasked with switching into the ubiquitous knockoff. So going itemless actually helps them there. Not only is being effectively itemless not as rewarding for belchers, but it's also more difficult and specific to activate, to say nothing of how it takes time. Forget any sort of immediacy with that. Sure, there are some cool potential applications. Eating a Pataya berry then unleashing a super strong belch is fantastic. You can go with Select Berry, enabling you to outrun the targets you want to belch against. Sure, there are low health activation berries, but if you're going to commit to such a strategy, you may as well have the benefits of belch. More reliably, you can go with the aforementioned strategy where you switch into irritating Thunder Waves, Toxics, Will-O-Wisp, or Scalds and get your belch going with Lumberry. But the trade-off for not activating it at low health is that here you are dependent on your opponent's moves going as planned, not the kind of control your own game strategy that generally brings consistency. We will say there is a fantastic application of belch in Gen 7 UU. Hydreigon is famously threatened by fairy types. Flash Cannon is generally good, but doesn't quite obliterate most of them, like Mega Altaria, and against the likes of Primarina, it straight up bounces off. Its only poison coverage is belch, but that is reliant on berries. Unless you run Poisonium Z, which elevates belch into a vicious acid downpour that vaporizes its targets. It's incredibly risky since it's a one-time effort. Once the Z is used up, you're left with 3 moves. You better nail your target with it. Having said that, the rewards, if you do, are immense. We wanted to end on a bit of a positive note with Belch, wonderful as that is to say out loud. Still, these concoctions of Game Freaks are generally disastrous. We had a blast diving into them and hope you enjoyed it as well. And please do let us know if there are any other bonkers ones should we dedicate to make this a trilogy and dive into the subject once more. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And thank you so much to our Platinum patrons. Thank you to Amphozenus, Alex Sable, Anthony Belval Renault, Bingleton, Daniel Isbeast, Dr. Mint, Funky, Glitcherton, Howl, Nurse Jake, Jack G, Lord of the Rabbit, Pretzel SP, Raven Daytona Ring, Ray Ray, Skylaria, Soares and Croxon, Shiwei Miji, Stoneface Colin, and Quetzalcoatl Northropi for their major support of our videos. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.